Welcome back, coders, to another quick video here, wanting to dive into a bit of this new information coming out about Project Stream. I was lucky enough to get my hands on the actual beta early access situation. The reason I think this is so important to cover is just because it is where the industry is going. Ubisoft has been quoted as saying that the future of gaming is streaming, that Xbox is building a streaming box. We know that for sure. I know that PlayStation has invested heavily in PlayStation Now. We're even seeing Ubisoft test things like Assassin's Creed Odyssey overseas in Japan with streaming specifically for Nintendo Switch. This allows consoles that seemingly have almost no ability to run some of these games to actually be able to pump out, Xbox One X level graphics just by simply streaming it over the internet. I think this is really the crux of the argument for streaming in games, because right now the technology, while so close, is just a hair away from where it should be. And that's what we're going to investigate as we watch this footage that I captured directly from my experience with Project Stream. Now, there's a couple things that you won't be able to see on the video, and there's a couple things that you will be able to see on the video. Let's first cover the areas that you won't be able to see, the things that are going to be only stuff that I can relate to you through experience. The first major one is input latency, and that's just the connection between your controller, their servers, and that interaction of the video coming back to you. Really, that is the biggest hurdle that all streaming situations are going to incorporate, have to overcome. And the issue currently is that while it's almost there, and I would argue that it is there for 30 frame per second games that require a 33 millisecond response time in order to display a single frame. It is just not there for 60 FPS games. There is no way that with the amount of input latency that I experienced on a fairly stable 50 megabit per second connection internet, that you're going to get consistently pleasing results for a shooter. But the very positive news, and the things that I can tell you right now after experiencing about 5 or 6 hours of this beta so far, is that the input latency for 30 FPS games is absolutely reasonable. Now, there's a couple things that Project Stream I think is doing differently, and this is all speculation on my part, but it's part of the way that I feel like they're overcoming the latency issue. First off, the biggest issue is obviously infrastructure. Google has the 9th biggest, I believe, just piece of infrastructure in terms of server farms that are existing in the United States that allows them to be able to stream this incredibly quickly and incredibly closely to the actual target person who is playing the game. That right there shaves off milliseconds of input latency and causes you to have a much more pleasant experience. The other aspect that they cover, and this is the more interesting one, is what I found is that while playing Project Stream, specifically with Assassin's Creed Odyssey, that the input latency never lagged. It was as laggy. Maybe I can say this differently. The input latency never changed. There was always latency. It was always maybe an extra tiniest bit of a second longer than it would have normally been in a native experience, but it never changed. It doesn't get slower to respond when I'm playing than, whereas in other experiences I found that button presses also took longer to input and sometimes would not be read. It was like data packet losses or something like that. So what they've really focused on in this experience, outside of it presenting it pretty nicely, is mainly on just making sure that that button press gets to that server instantly and gets back to you as quickly as it possibly can. And that's the great thing about Project Stream, and what I think takes it over the top from any other streaming service I've tried, even just the in-house, streaming your Xbox to your computer kind of situation. A lot of those ones get around things like by connecting your controller directly to your PC, and that's how they're able to negate some of that issue. But I think the big thing here is that is the main reason why Project Stream sets itself apart. That input latency doesn't get longer. You can adjust if the latency is always the same. You can adjust your gameplay style. Oh, over commit to button presses, or try to think ahead of the AI, things like that. You can adjust and get a very pleasant experience. However, if that is constantly wildly fluctuating, it is no longer your fault when you make a mistake. And in this case, I felt like it was very, very, very rarely my fault when I made a mistake. That leads me to the second part of this discussion, and really the parts that you can see clearly in the video. Now, in this 30-minute clip, which I will let run after I kind of discuss what's going on here, you will notice that the first 20 or so minutes is almost flawless. It looks like a absolutely pristine, perfectly anti-aliased 1080p image, and honestly, that's exactly what I was experiencing for that 20-minute session right there. Now, this does not represent the entirety of my experience, and you'll notice at the very end of the video, you start to see the artifacting, the stuttering, the more common things that you see in streaming services like this. Now, Google does a very, very good job of never making you feel like you're losing sections of the game. It's not cutting, it's not dropping massive amounts of frames. Instead, what you're doing is a very advanced situation of on-the-fly encoding that brings it from significantly lower resolutions to significantly higher resolutions depending on the bandwidth you have. Whatever algorithm that they're using is incredibly effective at this and has almost no issue holding up over strenuous load or dynamic changes. Now, this happens in my house particularly a lot more than it would in, say, like a perfect IGN type environment, and that's why I feel like it allows me to give you a very, very honest impression. This is just a personal house where my wife's streaming, Grey's Anatomy on the weekends while I'm doing this, and so when I was recording, I actually had other people in my house streaming Netflix, streaming Hulu, doing other things on their computers, their phones, and so the amount of bandwidth would vary wildly, and still Project Stream was able to hold up for the vast majority of it. I would say a game like Assassin's Creed Odyssey was the most brilliant move for them to mask a lot of the issues that might arise here, but it also comes at a very, very difficult, steep learning curve for them, which is building that algorithm that's able to learn on the fly and adjust its resolution with bandwidth limitations. And honestly, I've only been disconnected once. It was at a work environment where my internet is obviously being monitored in a way that's not exactly the same as at my house and gets, wildly fluctuated there too. Whereas at home, I had a much more stable connection and have never been kicked off. I've had a handful of times where it got so fuzzy that it wasn't very fun to play, but that was a very, very, very rare instance, and it was just in a situation where my internet was not holding up its end of the bargain. That's where I think we're kind of at. Latency is great. It's much better than it's ever been. It's not good enough for 60 FPS games. I can guarantee you there's never going to be a situation where a 16 millisecond game is going to feel as good as it should, or allow you to be competitive in online shooters like Call of Duty or PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds, anything like that. But to get that console level experience in your browser, it's absolutely mind-blowing. Like, I could play that on an old 2011 MacBook. Like, at this point, that's what's really going on, and the fact that that's going to evolve to phones and other aspects, other digital aspects in your life is just really, really incredible. I think ultimately what we need to see is, can we continue to make that latency smaller? Is it possible for us to push to 60 FPS games? And can we go to the next level of streaming where we're not getting those wildly fluctuating things? And honestly, I think the biggest thing that they're waiting for is just the infrastructure in the United States to get even better, and not even just on their side, but the internet provider's side. And that will honestly clean up a lot of these issues and ultimately make this a non-existent conversation. I do believe that in the next generation, you're going to be seeing at least 2 or 3 boxes that exist that are just streaming only. This will not be for the mainstream, but it will be for, well, it might be for the mainstream, but not for the hardcore gamer, because it will put you at a disadvantage in competitive games. Ultimately, though, it will be good for the industry, and I cannot wait to see where things like Project Stream, um, uh, PlayStation Now, Xbox's streaming service, which I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I want to know what you guys think now. Tell me in the comments below. Do you think that Project Stream from Google and other streaming services are the future? What are your concerns? And honestly, cap it off with just tell me what your experience has been with any other streaming services like OnLive or anything like that that has existed in the past. Again, thank you so much for tuning into today's video. And as always, stay classy, coders.
Let's hope no one notices me here. Hello, I see you. I need cover. If I'm quiet, I can hide in the bushes. Listen, Laka. Must be some eye to have that much protection. I have to stay out of view. By Zeus, the Cyclops doesn't mess around.
Where did that come from? What the? Put it down! Not good.
We'll just kill his family instead. That's the dream.
over there. I'm imagining things. That doesn't look right. Could have sworn I saw something. To cover! I have to find the archer. You don't stand a chance! I found her! Get them! I'm under fire! Hey, Corbin! Hurry! What? What do you think? Oh, the gods! Get you, coward! Stop!
You should have turned down this bounty, Talos.
Aye, be careful!
Do you know how many of his guards were there? All for a fucking rock.
This rock could buy a house, my friend.
And yet, it's still not enough to pay back the Cyclops.
Oh, don't be upset. Think of all the fun we've had.
Right. Your fun, my blood. You can't keep dragging me into things, Marcos.
This will work, I promise you. Would I lie to you?
Don't make me answer that.
Take the eye, but don't sell it yet. No vendor would believe we came by it lawfully. They know exactly who it belongs to.
Fine.
Better your pocket than his socket.
I think that's enough for one day. Quiere, Marcos.
Wait! I saw a boat. One I've never seen before.
So?
The vessel's too good for this dirty town. It must be the Cyclops, and he brought friends.
He's back? Ugh. I can never catch a break, can I?
Take them out, and that's one less thing to deal with. Besides, these strangers look rich as Chrysos. The Cyclops pays them well. It's win-win, my friend.
It can't hurt. What do I have to lose?
You? You're a winner if I ever saw one.
Then where are they?
In an abandoned house on the eastern coast. Who knows what golden fortunes shine in their hideout? Send them to Hades, then loot them for all they have. We'll be rich!
The eastern coast. Can you be more specific?
I think they've settled in an abandoned house, by a small forest south of Sami.
So, if these visitors aren't from Kefalonia, where did they come from?
All I know is Kefalonia will be the last place they'll ever see.
I'm keeping some of these golden fortunes, though. No negotiations.
Not even a drachme for the man who sent you?
The rest goes to pay your debt. These are my terms.
Oh, fine, fine. Now teach those strangers what it means to be Kefalonian. Draw blood or bleed.
Εννοείς κλέψεις.
στο τέρμα της ορού.
Συναλλάσσεται στο τέρμα της ορού. Γινή εστί ο γείτονος. Πάρα τι